Sterling Moss loses a championship he outdrove. 1958 is the most painful wrong winner season in Formula One's history because every single person who watched that year unfold knew who the better driver was. Sterling Moss was the quickest man in the world. He won 4 races. Mike Hawthorne won 1. Moss dragged uncompetitive machinery into contention, fought wheel-to-wheel with legends, and put on performances that would still make highlight reels today. Hawthorne, by contrast, was consistent, but never the fastest man in the field. And yet, the title didn't come down to racecraft or talent. It came down to one decision. A decision so noble that it might be the greatest example of sportsmanship the sport has ever seen. At the Portuguese Grand Prix, Hawthorne was disqualified for pushing his stalled car downhill in reverse. He was about to lose 7 crucial points until the last man anyone expected to intervene stood up for him. Sterling Moss, his championship rival, the man who needed Hawthorne to lose those points. Moss told the stewards that Hawthorne had not broken the rules. He defended the very man who was on track to beat him for the title. Those 7 points Moss gave back cost him the world championship. He finished the season 1 single point behind Hawthorne, a knife-edge difference created entirely by his own act of fairness. The wrong driver won in 1958, not because Hawthorne cheated, nor because Moss failed. It happened because Moss was too honest for the system he raced in. He became known as the greatest driver never to win a world championship. And 1958 remains the year where the world saw a title slip into the wrong hands, not through controversy, but through kindness. The title hunt that Lauda lost to survival, not speed. 1976 is not remembered as a championship. It's remembered as a battle for life itself. Niki Lauda started the season as a machine. 5 wins, 5 more podiums. He was walking toward back-to-back championships with the casual confidence of a man built for dominance. Then Nürburgring happened. A near-fatal crash. A fireball that melted his helmet. Burns that left him unrecognizable. Lungs filled with toxic fumes. Doctors weren't discussing racing timelines. They were discussing whether he'd live to see sunrise. But Lauda wasn't human that year. 6 weeks later, bandages still on his face, he got back into a Formula One car. He couldn't blink properly. His wounds reopened inside the helmet. He still raced. Hunt, meanwhile, capitalized. Wins, momentum, a championship swing that brought the title down to one final race in Fuji. A race drowned in monsoon rain so violent drivers couldn't see past the cockpit. Lauda looked at the track, at the visibility, at the risk, and made the bravest decision of his career. He pulled into the pits and stepped out. "I value my life too much," he said. That one choice, to survive rather than gamble in zero visibility conditions, cost him the championship. Hunt finished 3rd. Hunt became world champion, but the world never viewed Hunt as the better driver that season. Under modern points, Lauda still wins the title. Under race-only scoring, Lauda still wins the title. Under every statistical metric, Lauda was the rightful champion. But in 1976, the wrong driver won, and the right driver walked away with something far more important: his life. A season that should have belonged to Pironi. 1982 was chaos. 16 races, 11 different winners, politics everywhere, and a championship that felt cursed from the moment it began. And, in the middle of that chaos, stood Didier Pironi, the Ferrari driver who was, by every measurable standard, the best the grid had that year. He was fast. He was consistent. And by mid-season, he was leading the world championship. But the cracks started early, not on track, but inside Ferrari. San Marino, 1982. Pironi disobeyed team orders, overtook his teammate Gilles Villeneuve on the final lap, and won the race. Villeneuve was devastated and vowed never to speak to Pironi again. 2 weeks later, Villeneuve died in qualifying. Pironi carried the weight of that tragedy for the rest of the season. But he kept performing. He built an almost uncatchable championship lead. Then came Hockenheim. In wet conditions, with cars throwing sheets of spray into the air, Pironi slammed into the back of Alain Prost Renault at full speed, a violent crash that shattered his legs and ended his Formula One career instantly. He never raced again. And because he couldn't start another race, the championship slipped away. Keke Rosberg, talented, yes, but far less successful that year, won the title with 1 single race victory, the lowest win count of any champion in the sport's history. Had Pironi been able to finish even 1 more race, even in 6th place, he would have been champion by a mile. The wrong driver didn't win because of controversy. The wrong driver won because tragedy cut the rightful champion out of the story. story before he could finish it. Prost loses a championship he controlled all year. 1983 is the forgotten tragedy of Alain Prost's career. The season where he was the best driver on the grid, but lost the title because his team collapsed around him. Prost was leading the championship comfortably. His Renault was fast, consistent, and tuned to perfection. He won races across different circuit types, high speed, technical, power-heavy tracks, proving he could dominate anywhere. By mid-season, he looked untouchable. Journalists were already calling him the champion-elect. But Renault, as always, found a way to throw the season away. Late in the year, the team's reliability imploded. Turbo failures, fuel management issues, fragile engines that detonated under pressure. Prost didn't suddenly forget how to drive. His machinery simply stopped working. Meanwhile, over at Brabham BMW, Nelson Piquet had something Renault didn't. A qualifying engine. A monster. A unit so aggressive it sometimes lasted just one lap. But that one lap was all he needed. Piquet rocketed up the grid, won crucial races late in the season, and chipped away at Prost's lead race by race. Then, the brutal final blow. At the season finale in South Africa, Prost suffered yet another mechanical failure, his car limping, then dying completely. Piquet finished third. He won the title by 2 points. A championship Prost had dominated, thrown away by a team that couldn't match his consistency. Years later, even Renault insiders admitted the truth. The faster driver lost. The wrong man won the title. Mansell loses the championship to a single tire explosion. 1986 is the most heartbreaking case of a championship lost, not through driving, not through skill, but through a single catastrophic moment of mechanical betrayal. Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet had the fastest car, the Williams FW11. They dominated the season, often finishing 1-2, locking out poles, crushing the field. But the fight between them was so intense that it opened the slightest door for Alain Prost. Still, heading into the final race in Adelaide, Mansell was almost guaranteed to become world champion. He needed just a top 3 finish. He was calm, precise, managing the race perfectly. Then, lap 63 arrived. At 180 miles per hour, Mansell's left rear tire exploded. His car snapped sideways, showering sparks. The rear wing disintegrated. He wrestled the car away from the barriers in one of the greatest saves ever caught on camera. But the miracle wasn't enough. The tire failure eliminated him instantly. Williams panicked. They immediately pitted Piquet out of fear the same tire would explode. A panic stop that cost him the race win and the championship. Prost, who had been running behind both Williams drivers the entire afternoon, inherited the lead and won. The title was his. But across the paddock, no one pretended they didn't know the truth. Mansell was the man who should have walked away as world champion. He had the pace, the points, the season-long performance. Everything but the luck. One tire decided the title. One explosion changed the sport. One moment created one of the clearest wrong winner seasons in history. Schumacher becomes champion after the Adelaide controversy. 1994 is one of the most divisive seasons ever recorded. The championship where the final result came down, not to racing, but to a collision that still sparks arguments today. Michael Schumacher began the season brilliantly. 7 wins, blistering pace. But with brilliance came controversy. Disqualified in Britain, banned for ignoring a black flag, banned again for dangerous driving, disqualified in Belgium. He missed races, lost points, piled up penalties, and yet, entering the final race in Adelaide, he still led Damon Hill by a single point, a testament to Hill's own consistency through tragedy, pressure, and loss following Ayrton Senna's death earlier that year. What happened next is etched into F1 history. Schumacher hit the wall in the final race, damaging his Benetton. Hill attempted to pass on the inside. Schumacher turned sharply toward Hill, collided with him, and both cars ended up out of the race. Schumacher climbed out of his wreck, walked away, and became world champion. Hill and Williams stood in disbelief. Stewards called it a racing incident. Fans did not. To this day, countless analysts, ex-drivers, and even former FIA officials acknowledge the same uncomfortable truth. Damon Hill was the cleaner, more consistent, less controversial driver. Schumacher's title came not from dominance, but from a controversial last race collision that ended the fight before it could be settled fairly. It's a season burned into the sport, remembered not for greatness, but for the sense that the wrong driver lifted the trophy. Hakkinen beats Irvine after Ferrari's chaos. 1999 was supposed to be Ferrari's year. Not Eddie Irvine's, not Mika Hakkinen's. It was supposed to be Michael rival Schumachers, and for 6 rounds, it looked exactly like that, until Silverstone changed the entire season. Schumacher's brakes failed at Stowe, and he hit the barrier so hard he broke his leg in multiple places. Ferrari's title weapon was gone. Suddenly, Eddie Irvine, the man Ferrari had always treated as a supporting actor, was forced into the leading role, and to the shock of the entire paddock, he stepped up. Wins in Austria, Germany, Malaysia. He took the championship lead. He delivered consistent podiums while Hakkinen made errors under pressure. But Ferrari wasn't built to support Irvine. They were built to support Schumacher, and that difference defined the championship. Ferrari botched pit stops, botched tire calls, botched strategies. Half the time, Irvine wasn't even given equal resources because the team wasn't structured around him. Then came Suzuka, the decider. Schumacher returned from injury, now acting as Irvine's supporting driver. But in the race itself, Schumacher refused to slow the pace to allow Irvine a strategic overcut. He raced for himself, not the man who needed points. Irvine finished third. Hakkinen won. The championship slipped away. Even Irvine later said, "Ferrari didn't know how to win with me." And many insiders agreed. If Schumacher hadn't been injured, or if Ferrari had supported Irvine like a true number 1-1, the title was his. The wrong driver didn't just win in 99. The right driver never got the team he needed. Massa loses a championship he drove perfectly. Even Lewis Hamilton fans admit this one. Felipe Massa drove like a world champion in 2008. He lost because almost everything around him imploded. Massa was flawless at Monza, perfect at Turkey, untouchable in Brazil. He had more wins than Hamilton, more poles, fewer mistakes behind the wheel. But Ferrari's collapse was biblical. Singapore, leading comfortably, Ferrari released Massa from the pit stop with a fuel hose still attached. He dragged it down the pit lane. A guaranteed win turned into 0 points. Hungary, he dominated from lap 1. He was seconds from victory. Then, 3 laps from the flag, the Ferrari engine exploded. 2 wins, gone. 20-plus championship points, gone. Not because of Massa, but because of Ferrari. Meanwhile, Hamilton made errors of his own. Crashes in Bahrain, collisions in Canada, wet weather mistakes, but always had a car ready to recover. And then came Brazil. Massa won his home Grand Prix perfectly, crossed the line as a world champion. The crowd erupted. His family celebrated. Ferrari mechanics cried. For the 30 seconds, he was on top of the world. Then Glock, crawling on dry tires in the rain, slid out of the final corner. Hamilton passed him. Championship stolen in the last 12 seconds of the year. Massa didn't lose because he failed. He lost because everything else did. He was the better driver that season. And the only reason he didn't win is because the universe refused to let him. Alonso loses the greatest complete season in F1 history. If championships were awarded for driving perfection, Fernando Alonso would have walked 2012 by the summer break. The Ferrari F 2012 was a monster, and not the good kind. It was slow, unstable, unpredictable, and aerodynamically broken. At the first race, Alonso said the car was not fit for a Ferrari. He still dragged it to podium after podium. He won in Malaysia in the wet. He won in Valencia in a midfield car. He kept scoring points in a machine that engineers said shouldn't be near the top 10. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel had a faster car, better development, and better luck. 2 of Alonso's biggest point losses came from being hit by other drivers. Then Spa and Suzuka, both opening lap incidents where he wasn't remotely at fault. Remove those 2 freak accidents, and Alonso becomes champion comfortably. Every expert agrees. What Alonso did in 2012 was the most complete season of driving ever recorded. Consistency, racecraft, wheel-to-wheel skill, 0 errors, maximum extraction from minimum machinery. But the points didn't reflect the performances. Vettel won the title by 3 points. A title earned through pace, yes, but also through circumstances Alonso never had control over. 2012 stands as the clearest modern example of the wrong driver lifting the trophy. Not because Vettel wasn't great, but because Alonso was better. Hamilton loses a title he had already won. 2021 wasn't just controversial. It's widely regarded as the most unjust championship conclusion in Formula One history. Hamilton dominated the Abu Dhabi finale. He pulled away from Verstappen. He controlled the tires. He defended aggressively. He was 11 laps from winning an 8th world championship. Then Nicholas Latifi crashed. Safety car. Under normal rules, one of 2 things should happen. A, end the race behind the safety car, or B, let all lapped cars through and finish with one final green lap sprint. Race control followed neither option. Instead, they created a rule that didn't exist. Only the cars between Hamilton Hamilton and Verstappen were allowed to unlap themselves, artificially placing Verstappen directly behind Hamilton with fresh softs. Other lapped cars were not released. The safety car was withdrawn early, and the final lap became a shootout Hamilton had no chance of defending. Verstappen passed him. He won the race. He won the championship. Later, the FIA admitted the rules were handled incorrectly. Michael Masi was removed from his position. Regulations were rewritten, so the situation could never happen again. Even lifelong F1 journalists, even neutral fans, still say the same thing. Hamilton won that race. Hamilton won that title. He just didn't get the trophy. It is the most famous modern example of a season where the wrong driver, through procedural failure, not performance, became world champion.